Lower Third podcast. Very excited about my guest today. I met him at the National Press Club back when we were allowed to leave our houses and roam freely around the city. But the goal of this podcast, for those of you who are new, is to introduce you to people who are relentless and unstoppable and creating change and opportunity everywhere they go. And I've relaunched this because of the pandemic, and I feel like it's really important for people to check in with each other, learn about each other, understand that we're all in this together, and that everybody's got different challenges and struggles and wins and everything else going on at the same time. So I hope you enjoy this episode. The guest today, his name is Anthony Shop. He is an incredible person, super nice and very hospitable. And that's just the beginning of it. Anthony Shop co-founded Social Driver in 2011, and since then has won a slew of awards, including the seventh fastest growing marketing company in the United States, the coolest company in DC, I think, by right? Washington Business Journal, 40 under 40. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm not even getting all of these, but we're going to dig right into this. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Anthony Shop. How you doing today?
Good, Molly. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited for this conversation, actually, because I think that you're just an amazing person. And I'm really impressed with everything that you've done. And it seems like you're really ahead of the curve in a lot of ways. And so tell me a little bit, I know that you did some work with some government agencies, and I can't remember what it is that you studied in college. Can you remind me?
Oh, sure. Well, first, thanks. You're very kind, and I just am so impressed by everything you're doing right now and connecting with people. I met you because we were doing a National Digital Roundtable event focused on audio engagement, and you were one of
Yeah.
the innovators that we identified to learn about and to discuss podcasting and everything. So it's thrilling to be invited to be part of it and be on your
Yeah.
show. So thank you.
Thank you. That was amazing. I actually got connected to Kristen St. John because of that event, and we're still super chummy
Oh,
on
she's
LinkedIn.
great.
And yeah, no, I can't thank you enough for that. That was awesome. And I got to be oh, I was at a digital roundtable at the National Press Club, which has a lot of cachet on LinkedIn. So but yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm really, just really interested. It seems like you are really just you're a connector, you're an innovator, you bring people together. But I'm really fascinated, 2011, that's, you're really ahead of the curve with Social Driver. I mean, 2011, I don't feel like social media was quite the thing. And your background, it is certainly relevant, but it's definitely a big jump to head into this digital space. And so I'm curious, what was the
Yeah.
inspiration behind that? What was that motivation?
Yeah, well, when I was in college studying international relations and journalism, I could have never imagined a company like Social Driver even existing, much less starting one like that. So it's been, pretty crazy to see the world change. But we started the company not too long after the iPhone was released, and we
Ah,
could just see that the way people were connecting with one another and the way companies were connecting with people was changing. And I actually got a firsthand view of this in 2008 working for a congressional race as press secretary, and just seeing how Barack Obama and his campaign used Facebook and used sort of peer powered grassroots advocacy through their website as a way to just connect with people in ways that campaigns had never done before. So that was kind of our inspiration. And when we started the company in 2011, my husband Thomas and I, you couldn't even buy an ad on Facebook. So that shows you how much has changed. It's now, one of the largest ad marketplaces in the entire world, a multi-billion-dollar out of nothing. I mean, back in 2011, believe it or not, Yellow Pages was actually still a business that was, pretty valuable. Now it's really not in existence anymore. So we've seen a lot of change, and it's been really fun to be part of that and just to work with fantastic companies and nonprofits to help them navigate that from the really early days where we were helping companies launch social media accounts that they didn't have a Twitter account. We helped Honda launch their first Twitter account for government relations and the entire auto industry, and
wow.
just figuring out what that process is to now, of course, things have matured and the challenges that people have are different than they used to be.
That was probably a really interesting conversation, trying to get them to buy into this. You're it's this online platform and it's only 23 characters. And they were probably we're a car company, what's a Twitter, right? Like, how did you handle some of those objections, or were those people that had some interest and you kind of guided them down the path, or were you approaching those companies saying, listen, this is the wave, you need a surfboard?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of both, right? So you always have some people in the companies that are skeptical, and they're just like, well, maybe this works for others. Is it going to be a fit for us? And in this case, there's always usually some sort of a champion on the inside who wants to try new things. And so we got connected with a guy named John Otto, who's really fantastic. He works at Axios now. And he said, I think there's an opportunity here. And we agreed with him. We met him at a training we did. And we said, yeah, like there are other industries that are using Twitter as a way to connect with folks who are leaders in policy and politics. I mean, at some point, I would imagine that they didn't have phones on Capitol Hill. And the phone was invented, and people went, geez, you better get one of these if you want to, connect easier, right? Rather than going up in person. And then once they got them up there, you better have your own. Well, that's kind of what happened with Twitter. It became a really powerful platform for congressional staff, but even for members of Congress to distribute information directly to the public, but also to listen and receive information. And so we said, look, your brand account can't do that for you. There's a different audience here, and Twitter's an opportunity. And so we worked with him to build the case and put the research together and say, here's how we're going to do it and get it off the ground. And it was pretty cool to do that.
Yeah, I mean, well, and it's interesting to see now how much like politicians and everybody really uses Twitter. I mean, that's a huge platform. If you look at like AOC and like her Instagram and her Twitter account, I mean, she's really, getting out and getting in front of people, which upsets a lot of people apparently. But like, she's really using social media to further her message, which well, so is who, but that's a whole other conversation, I suppose.
Right. Well, I mean, it's funny, we met, like you said, at the National Press Club, right? And if we think about not that long ago, the press were these gatekeepers to information.
Right.
You really couldn't get your information out to the public without going to the press, right?
100%.
That's how you got your information out. And newspapers don't typically publish full transcripts of speeches, right? They tend to pick excerpts. And so as part of that process, they're deciding what people are going to hear. So we had these gatekeepers, which played a very powerful role and had a very high level of trust from the public. And then what we've seen folks, not only in politics, but in companies and others, as well, done is figure out, how do I go directly to my people without that gatekeeper? That's been the big trend. And I'll tell you, I had this sort of funny experience right after the election. Our office is at 15th and L. And we were going into work, and our office building got blocked off. There was something going on, and looked up, and there was a guy on this construction crane. It was directly outside our window. So for those of us who'd gotten into the office in time, we could see it, but some people were not able to get in. And everybody thought, is this somebody who's going to jump? Like, what's happening? Well, it turns out it was Greenpeace, and they unfurled a banner that said resist. And you could see it. You remember that? You could see it actually from the sort of footage of the White House from the South Lawn. You could see this resist banner above it. And while that was happening, the news was reporting it. First, they didn't know who it was, what was going on, but Greenpeace was on Facebook Live directly from the top of that crane, sharing what they were doing to hundreds of thousands of people. And simultaneously, 2 blocks away, Donald Trump is also tweeting to lots of people, millions of people. And in both cases, they're going around the gatekeepers. They're going 100%. Directly to the public. And I think that's just that moment in time is a perfect image for the transition that we've seen and that we've woken up to. And there's some great things about that, but there are some really difficult things about that. And we're all grappling with, how do we live in a world where the gatekeepers don't have as much power, and how do we stop the flow of misinformation and disinformation, and how do we build communities so that we don't have such a polarized country? And these are all big issues we're going to keep dealing with, but it's what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about podcasting, is because it's uncensored. You can create your own content. And a lot of people talk about, in podcasting, the barrier for entry, and they refer to the equipment being cheaper. And I'm like, that's not really it. It's marginal how much the prices of microphones have dropped or whatever. Sure, we have better technology. I have this like Shure MB88. We're not sponsored by them, by the way, but like, it's a great little thing that attaches to your phone. It's super cool, right? But like, that's not it. Like, the barrier for entry was the distribution. Like, now you can can create
Yeah.
a podcast, you can record it, you can distribute it on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Pandora, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, all for free, right? Without a PR agent, without a, media outlet contact. So it's like, that's what's really the game changer. And it's like you said, there's good things about that, there's bad things about that. But I love the fact that, like, we're, the news that we're getting isn't controlled by one source, right? Like, some of these larger conglomerates are going to get a real run for their money. I think,
Yeah.
especially now, like, as independent media and more people are getting handy with, cameras and microphones and everything else, I think there's going to be a real, turnover, right? I think a lot of Americans are kind of sick of mainstream media right now in general, right?
And you're already seeing it. You're seeing independent media, doing really well, and different, audiences sort of fracturing to their own sources. And I think that can be really good in some cases. And then, of course, the challenge is sometimes some of those sources are so biased that,
Yeah,
or here's the big problem I see is foreign influence, because
yeah.
it's really difficult sometimes. Somebody, once sent me an article, see, da da da, and it was from RT, and I'm like, RT is like a state-owned Russian media, and this person didn't know that. It was a
Didn't
family
know.
member. They didn't know. They had no idea, because it was they'd seen it on TV in hotels before, and so they just thought it was some
It's legit.
legit, thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I only get my news now from the Weather Channel, because they are the most in the middle and they are the most accurate according to that chart that's been going around on social media,
Right.
which is a sad state of affairs. Associated Press and Weather Channel are like squarely in the middle. I'm like, well, that's
Yeah.
it. That's the only place I'm getting my news from. And they still get the weather wrong. Go figure. You can't even get that
Right.
right. But at least they're not lying about it. It's not a
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
not a bias. It's just an incorrect radar reading. So yeah, well, and I want to talk about the National Press Club, because I noticed that you are on the board of governors, which I don't even know what is that. That sounds very important.
Sounds very great. I was on it for 3 years. I'm not anymore, but the press club is, I mean, almost, I guess it's over 100 years old at this point. This really kind of amazing institution. And I'll tell you something, that when I was elected to the board, we have 3 seats on the board for non-journalists. And so I was elected into one of those. And somebody said, "You're the first new media person we've ever had on this board." And I was like, wow, that's, interesting and kind of scary. And as I looked back, I read into the history, and I found that back in and I'll forget the years, I want to say it was like the 40s, maybe early 50s, there was a guy, I think his name was Theodore Koop. I remember the last name was Koop, was elected. And it was really controversial at the time, because he was a radio person. He was not a print broadcast, or a print, print newspaper, right? He was a radio broadcaster. And at the time, radio was not seen as legitimate like print. It was seen as a
Right.
form of new media. And so
Yeah.
I thought, well, okay, well, I think he was the first new media person. The sad thing was that he wasn't elected until 20 years after the first news radio broadcast. And so it took them that long to get that
Wow.
representation. So, some organizations, that they move a little more slowly, and that, but there's maybe some merit to that. So it was great to be part of that, and to learn from established journalists, and to try to bring some new ideas through a digital media series I organized there, to bring in bloggers and social media folks from CNN, and just talk
Yeah.
about these changes, because I don't think it's helpful for us to pine for the world that we used to live in. I think
Agreed.
that's true of media. I think that's true of COVID situation. We can't just go, oh, we can wish it were back like it used to be. We have to realize that the world's constantly evolving, and it's our job to create that future, and to understand where things are going, and kind of like what you said earlier, kind of ride that wave. And so
Yeah.
there's some major opportunities to do that in the media landscape, with this COVID stuff, and just with what's happening in digital. I think we can empower, if you're a nonprofit with a cause and not a lot of money, you used to not be able to compete against big brands. And now you see these nonprofits that do stuff that goes viral, and they're competing. They have more share of voice than these,
Right.
multi-billion-dollar brands that are spending a lot on advertising. And you realize that couldn't have happened before. So that's one of the amazing things about the world we live in today, the opportunity to unleash the energy of people through the power of digital technology.
For sure. And I feel like, we have to really talk about accessibility, right? Like, that's one kind of
Mm.
gift of things moving to virtual, is, not everybody, number one, I joke about this, but like I went to Orlando twice last year for podcast conventions, and I was like, I'm not spending any more money to go to Orlando. No disrespect, Orlando, but like I want to go on vacation, and like those hotel rooms and those like that stuff costs money, right? So a lot of these expos and conventions and conferences, I think, are going to be retooled, but in a way that's going to make it accessible for a lot more people, not just physically, but like financially and everything else. And I think it's really important to move into that because, it can't just be like the good old boys club, or it can't just be for a certain group of people, right? Like we need to open up that access. I know I've been doing, I did an online fundraiser for the YWCA because I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina these days. And so I got linked up with them, and they do a gala every year. And they're like, we don't know what to do. Like, we do this big dinner and we don't have it. And so we can't raise any money and we really need it. And what's unique about them is they were actually open during the Spanish flu. So over 100 years
Wow.
ago, the YWCA was open and was doing the same thing, providing childcare, providing meals, like being that like community leader. And here they are, another 100 years later,
Mm,
and they're in the same thing. And again, they're providing childcare for frontline workers and food and everything else. And they're like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, man, this is easy. Like, we can record content. Like, I'll do a bunch of interviews. We'll spice it together. We'll put some overlays on it. We'll broadcast it as if it was live. And I mean, they raised, more than half of what they normally would, except their expenses were, whatever they
yeah.
didn't raise is how much they saved, and not, spending 8 months out of the year and booking a hotel and the photographer and the plated meals and you know what I mean? And so they actually raised like the same amount of money, but they did it all virtually, right? And I think that's going to open up a lot of people's minds about how things get done, right? And the haves and the have-nots and accessibility. I think that's going to shift a little bit to really kind of meet where people are, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, I don't want to ever replace the power of getting together with people. Like those, that's really impactful, right? But at some point, like,
Yeah.
how much time during the year is a nonprofit spending on creating that gala when they could be really focused on their mission or their content or whatever else? So it'll be really be
Mm.
interesting to see, like, yeah, what happens moving forward and what that really looks like. Um,
I love that you did that, that you helped them with that. I mean, just what a great way to channel your talents into helping a nonprofit
Thanks.
meet the moment with their people. That's fantastic. And I think you're absolutely right. Everyone is going to be rethinking about how they connect with one another, how they raise money. We work at Social Driver with a lot of folks who organize annual meetings, conferences, conventions. And one of the things that a lot of, I think, the really savvy ones are thinking about at the leadership level is they're saying, we had this annual meeting, and because it was the one time that lots of people came together in person, we threw everything into this meeting. It was awards, it was professional development, it was networking, it was, you do everything because it's the one time. But when you realize that you're going to have to do some things, even if you keep the meeting, maybe there's some hybrid version of it, maybe it's virtual, you go, well, now I don't have to make it all happen in real time. Things can be asynchronous. Maybe some of these trainings, rather than having everybody cram into a breakout room,
Right.
between lunch and coffee break, and that's like the way you get delivered, this content to you. Maybe that should be delivered in a way that people can access it for 30 days after, or for the whole year, and that we can test them on their progress and they can do it where they want. Maybe
Right.
that would make it much more accessible, to your point, so more people can get to it.
Exactly.
And I think we're just seeing a lot of that, and it's
Mhm.
there's some exciting stuff in there to think about how we can improve the outcomes we're trying to achieve, versus just, but I think also, there's an energy that you bring people together, and there's going to be opportunities to do that, but hopefully do it in a bigger, better way than
Mhm.
how we have maybe been doing it in the past. I mean, how many times do you go to an event where it's like the survey is like a piece of paper they hand out in the room? Well, on a virtual meeting, you can't do that. So we've been at my company using Asana to track, when we do company town halls, questions and comments during the town hall. We can upvote them and downvote them in real time so that we can then
Right.
address those. And we
Right.
went, we're doing this virtually. Even if we did do something physically, we should incorporate this because it gives you a superpower when you're in that
Totally.
meeting. And so I think it's opening a lot of doors.
Yeah, I think the way we communicate will change a little bit, and I think that's good. And I think at the end of the day, it'll make getting together so much more impactful. Like, I can't wait to hug the hell out of everybody I know. It's gonna get awkward. I'm totally cool with that. But like, I think it's gonna make us appreciate those things a little bit more, or a lot more,
Yeah.
honestly. Like when we do get to see each other, and it'll feel less like a chore and more like a gift. I think so.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. So how are you? So you're still doing the digital roundtable. So you've moved those all
Yeah.
to
Well, we've
being,
adjusted those.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you bet. Sorry to cut you off there, but yeah,
No.
the National Digital Roundtable, we used to do almost actually all of our events were in person. About twice a month, we would get a small group of people together. We always would meet at the press club for a coffee roundtable about a topic, and then we would do um, events less often that were larger. So our last big in-person event was at the Embassy of Italy. They were our partner, and it was focused on trends in augmented and virtual reality. So we heard how
Mm,
diplomats are using it, marketers are using it, nonprofit folks, policymakers, and so it was kind of a nice cross-cutting discussion. And I love doing stuff at the press club and at the embassies and stuff. But right now it's not possible, so we've had to
no.
move things online. And what we found is, to your point, it's much more accessible for people in the morning. It's hard to get across town to something like
It
that. We
was,
can
yeah.
include people from across the United States or even the
Totally.
world if we want to. We can share visuals in a different way than we can do if we're sitting around a table. We can record pieces if we want. We can do
Right.
polls. So there's a lot of opportunity to achieve our mission, which is that we want to convene. I mean, what we do is convene the premier sort of events that bring those innovators and policy shapers and practitioners together in the digital space so that we can make the world a better place. And any way that we can do that, I mean, we're really happy to do it. And we've just found that there are ways that we can do that that we never even thought of now that we've moved to doing all of our events for the time being virtually. We did a workshop a couple weeks ago for CEOs of nonprofits to help them go from being a chief executive to a chief influencer. And it was really kind of a 90-minute workshop training to talk about best practices. We had over 300 people register for that event. I mean, we'd never
Dude.
have seen attendance like that before. So we're seeing that there's a big need right now. And I think everybody without these other tools in their tool belt is saying, okay, I need to step up my digital and I need to figure out what the best practices are and how my organization can use it. So we're busier than ever right now.
Yeah, man, I would love to see those digital roundtables turned into a podcast. I feel like that'd be a podcast I would actually listen to, because I enjoyed the one that I was at so much. It was just such a cool group of people, and the one thing that I loved, like, just immediately sitting down, I was like, there's equal amount of women and men around this table, which, like, that's not a common thing at all. Like, not at
Yeah.
all. There's usually like one token person of color and one token woman, just to like check that box. And I was like, okay, Anthony's my kind of guy, because like he made sure. And I thought it was really great. I was really impressed with everybody there. I mean, everybody, the men and the women, everybody was equally impressive. But I love the diversity there. And so I can only imagine. I mean, I just went to one. And you've done so many of these. I'm sure there's so much valuable information in there that would be really helpful. But speaking of which, diversity and inclusion is definitely like a
Yeah.
big thing for you. Did you find any like kickback on like your identity or the the company culture of Social Driver at all, working with such I mean, because you have a pretty healthy corporate roster. Did you
hmm
ever have any issues with that, or did you just sort of like power through them, or
Well, I mean, we've been really lucky because we have benefited from being part of some amazing communities since we launched Social Driver. So when Thomas and I got going, we immediately in DC joined it used to be called the Capital Area Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. Now it's called the Equality Chamber. And we found that to be such a warm, inviting community and just wonderful connections. And then we got connected to the National LGBT Chamber, which has been tremendous. I mean, and we've been, longtime members of that. We were their Business of the Year.
yeah,
And then we also have gotten involved with the Hispanic Chamber. Thomas is Hispanic, so we gotten involved with the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and our local Hispanic Chamber and the National Minority Supplier Development Council. And what we found is, um, I think companies really want to do business with organizations that are not only diverse owned, but that represent diversity in terms of their people and their thought and their experience, and that just bring that. Because look, if you're a company or an association or a nonprofit or whatever in America, you serve a diverse audience. Right? We
mm-hmm.
have a very diverse country. And if you're not figuring out how to meet that audience, you're not going to be able to succeed as much as you would like. And so who's going to bring that perspective? Diverse teams, diverse owned companies, et cetera. So we've gotten involved with those communities, and early on, we did free trainings. We participated and benefited from trainings. We got mentors, friends, networks, did business. I mean, we've done business with we've tracked over 24 other diverse owned businesses, whether that's minority owned, LGBT owned, disabled owned. And, you get innovative ideas when you work with people who come with different perspectives or who've had obstacles they've had to overcome, because
Totally.
you have to be creative to overcome obstacles. So you get naturally creative folks. So I'd say for us, there's certainly been challenges in the world of, banks saying, can't help you, or businesses maybe not, being comfortable with certain things about our culture or who we are. But thankfully, we've been able to become part of some great communities where the benefits we've gotten from the wonderful people in those communities have, at least been what we focused on. So we haven't had to focus as much on,
Yeah,
those challenges, even though they certainly have existed, and,
for sure.
focus on that.
Well, hopefully we're getting a little, closer to getting past that now, with just like so much, attention to like Black Lives Matter and just diversity
Yeah.
and all these diversity hires and putting CEOs. And, sometimes I worry because I want it to just be like a checking a box thing, but it's like, at this point, just like kick down the door, get those positions, let's start to make some change. And let's really walk the walk. And I mean, you've certainly been tremendously, successful with all your projects and everything else that you've done. I mean, you wouldn't have gotten all these accolades and done all these things if you weren't getting it all the way right. So nothing but respect there for sure.
Well, thank you. We have an excellent team. I mean, I'm so proud to be part of the Social Driver team. I mean, the people we have are just so passionate and so talented. And I see it every day that when people have different life experiences and different backgrounds, I mean, we sometimes even say, bring everything you are to all that you do, is sort
Yeah,
of a good way of looking at it. And they do, and you just get wonderful outcomes from that. And so if you have a company that's naturally welcoming and inclusive, and people don't have to, you know, spend energy not being themselves at work, and they can spend energy just being themselves and doing a great job, and finding, innovating new ideas, and challenging you when they have better ideas than you. I mean, you create a workplace like that, the team is pretty much unstoppable. So we've have just tremendous people, and we're just so grateful for that. And I think our clients see that, and other partners of ours that we work with, who, we even work with in other ways, that come to us, and they want that innovation, they want that creativity, and they try to learn from how we do things, sometimes even things that are outside of the core, because we might get hired to build a website or run a social media campaign or make some videos, which are all tremendous things that we do. But in the process, they learn, how can you allow people to have more flexibility in the workplace but continue to be efficient and effective? We've been working on that for years. So when we had to start working from home from COVID, we have people in 5 cities.
right,
Our clients were turning to us for advice. They were turning for
right,
us for help, and we were helping them. And so we're doing much more for them than building a website or running a marketing campaign. We're actually
totally.
helping their business adapt during a challenging time. And where are those ideas coming from? Different people with different backgrounds and different life experiences, who at one point probably said, have you thought about doing this? And lots of people thought they were crazy. And now everybody says, wow, what a trendsetter.
Meanwhile, yeah, it's a genius idea. Yeah, well, it's like a barbecue. You go to a cookout, you don't want everybody to show up with potato salad. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's not a good barbecue, man. You need hot dog buns, you need hot dogs, you need to come with all of the things. And so, yeah, diversity is always going to win, right? But it's diversity of thought and experience and perspective
Yeah.
and challenges, not just, yeah, that's beautiful for sure. So where do you think, things are kind of headed? Has the business been, have you been pretty stable since you're so digital focused? I would imagine so. Like, what kind of changes are you guys making to adapt to all of these things?
Well, our number one priority during this entire time has just been our team. Is we were among the first companies in Washington to say we're closing the office. I mean, I think it
Mm-hmm.
was, a couple of days, few days before most other folks did it, because we just sort of could see what was coming,
Yeah.
and we wanted to minimize the risk, even
Mm-hmm.
though our office building might not have particularly been risky. People have commutes and public transportation, and we
Totally.
knew we were set up for that. Some companies said, "Gosh, we were going to do this, but we have to wait 3 days because people have to come in and bring their desktop computer home or something." Thankfully, we were set up technology wise that we could make that decision. And I mean, and Thomas that's really kind of spearheaded that work. And I give him so much credit for it, because we've gotten a lot of feedback that, wow, you guys were kind of early on this. And I think that was all him for sure. So that was, focusing on our team and then saying, okay, now we're in a stressful time. There's a lot of anxiety. What can we do to minimize that? How can we create flexibility? And not just through COVID, through all of the events after COVID, in terms of the killing of George Floyd and
Mm-hmm.
the protests. And I mean, just all of that adds extra anxiety, extra stress to everybody for just looking at the news and what's going on in our world, and understanding the systemic challenges that we're all aware of, but that I think there was a heightened awareness of, and maybe a new
Totally.
awareness for some people in our country. So more flexibility, trying to lean in and care for people, just do anything we can. That's really where we started,
Yeah.
because you can't do that. I mean, you can't. I mean, I interviewed a former employee of ours as a professor now, and she was in a magazine just giving experience, and I just loved her advice. She said, when there's a time of crisis, your instinct should not be, what am I going to go say to the world? Your instinct should be, what am I going to tell my team? How am I going to
Yeah.
reassure my team? What am I going to say to them first, and start in the middle and have it kind of go out. Her name's Dr. Candice Parrish, and we had a great chat about it. And I think after I talked to her, I realized that's probably something smart that Thomas and our leadership team did at the beginning. So that has helped us a lot. We have clients who've been coming to us for help. Certainly, everybody's faced challenges during this time. There have been projects that have slowed down and been canceled, but thankfully, we have been able to manage, because there, to your point, are a lot of people who need extra help. Their
Mm-hmm.
conferences are going virtual. They need help with that, and so
Right.
we've just been trying to figure out what expertise can we bring. How can we help? And if you just start with communication and helping as your kind of core values, I mean, that's can't really go wrong, I don't think, and you can manage whatever storm comes your way.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. Resilience is always key for sure. Have any of your like services or offerings changed, or are you kind of in the same lane?
The core services and offerings haven't changed. I mean, our goal is to help companies and nonprofits connect with people today, and to do that through digital strategy and creative. And so that has
Right.
stayed the same. But within that, there definitely have been some changes. We're doing a lot more marketing around virtual events and helping our clients think through what those look like.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's taking something physical and putting it online. But to your point about the work that you were doing with the YWCA, it's rethinking it. It's coming up with a different strategy. And I think that's been a fun thing that we've been able
Yeah.
to help. I mean, I've been part of some of that, and I love it, um, because it's just helping to rethink things. And so that's definitely picked up. The other is being creative. A lot of folks are so used to hiring these video crews to come in and do these sort of TV commercial style shoots. And we've all seen that that's not only not necessary anymore, sometimes it's not possible. And
Right.
so helping them think about, how can I collect user generated content, or how can I take footage I have? And sometimes we're
Right.
editing footage that they collect at home versus us sending a crew to go do that. So we've definitely seen some changes in that regard. I think everybody's figuring out, how do I connect with people better wherever they are, whether that's through marketing or through technology, like their website. And that's, I think, been some of the big shifts that I've seen within the services. But the overall just vision of what we do hasn't had to change, thankfully, versus I know for some businesses it has.
Yeah, which is great. Like I work with the Diversity and Flexibility Alliance, and they
Oh,
talk about like flex success and like moving your employees to like working remotely. And I'm like, this is it. This is your time to shine right here. This is what you've been
yeah.
working towards, because it's, some people's industries are just going to disappear, and then other industries are being created, and then other, industries are thriving, right? It's kind of a mashup of all of those things. So excellent. Well,
Yeah.
this has been a great conversation. I love everything that you're talking about, and I couldn't agree more. It always boils down to the team and just having some compassion and letting people have bad days and like being okay with that. And standing up. I recently like fired a client actually because they were
Mm.
it's not very nice. And I just thought to myself, I'm not going to put Matt, the engineer, through that. You know what I mean? Like, times are
Yeah,
hard enough,
yeah. You
and
got
I
to
was,
do it sometimes.
and it felt really good, to be honest. I was like, cool. He was like, plenty of other students. I was like, excellent. It's been
Yeah,
fun. And I'm sure he did not expect that to happen, but you have to really protect the people that make your business work. And I'm not going to put anybody
100%.
through that. I don't care if it would be our last client. I'm not going to sign up for that. So hopefully maybe this pandemic has kind of shifted some people, right, and how they value their staff and their lives and their time and their money and their families and everything else. I think there's a big shift coming there. So I'm glad to know
Yeah.
that you are, behind the helm in a lot of these campaigns and working with these, large companies and organizations to make sure that they're getting that right, because it's really important.
So many of them want to do the right thing and they just need a little bit of help in figuring out what that looks like. And, I think to your point with clients, you have to be willing to not work with folks, and you have to also be willing to push folks that you work with, push those companies and ask them hard
Mm,
questions, or say, the way that you said this or the way you're thinking about this is going to be offensive. And they may not realize it. You're helping them learn, but you have to be willing to say that.
yeah,
And it's hard, but I've seen our team do that in some cases where I know it's really hard for them to stand up to somebody who's a lot older and has,
right.
just and they've done it. And you got to do that. And sometimes you do have to walk away like you described, but try to hope that everybody has good intentions and is trying to get to a good place, and just sort of meet them there first, because most of us, I think, are just trying to navigate through this crazy world that seems to be getting crazier.
100%. And I think now more than ever, it really matters like who you decide to work with. Like, one of our clients is the law firm Miller and Chevalier, and their office is right downtown on Black Lives Matter Plaza now. And so that mural is right in front of their building. And I love them so much. And they're like the oldest law firm in DC, and there's like 100 attorneys. And you're just thinking this is going to be this, stodgy old group of people. And it's not. They're just like so full of life. And they did like an hour-long podcast about like Black Lives Matter and equality. And they didn't just like put out a statement. They did. And these guys
Yeah.
have, podcasts about sanctions, like nothing to do with this. And they were like, no, we want to make this very clear how we feel about it. And they put out a statement as a company as well, and they just kind of decided that, hey, if this was going to offend clients, maybe they didn't need to be their clients. And that kind of stuff really just like warms my heart, because it's like, yeah, man, we need the older, institutions to kind of stand up and do the right thing right now, because they're going to be, people emulate them, right? People, other smaller law
Yeah.
firms are going to want to do what they did, and that's the wave, right? So I think it's really good in its own way, right? Like, we're really seeing what people are made of, and I think the true leaders are going to really, rise to the top and continue to be that light that we all need, right? And we can take turns, right? And not every day is great. Like, there's days where I'm like, yeah, no, I'm going to be on the couch like gently weeping, and like that's just where we're at today. But tomorrow I'll be back. And I think as long as we can kind of tag team and work together and collaborate, then like, just maybe there's hope for us yet.
You bet. And I love that you're doing that work. I'm familiar with your work, and I just think how you help these organizations like that law firm get their message out and communicate these important things to go around that gatekeeper, right? That's probably what they're doing, is probably never going to get picked up by a major newspaper, but you're helping them reach the right people with that message through this
Exactly.
powerful medium. And so I just really admire you for the
Oh,
quality of the work you do, and also just the passion and energy you bring to it. It's not just churning stuff out. I mean, you really are bringing that love for it to everything you do. And anyway,
oh.
I just think it's great. So thanks for everything you do, Molly.
Thank you, Anthony. That's quite a compliment. I really appreciate that. Seriously, I have nothing but respect for you. And doing a little bit of research, I was like, oh man, like you've got a long list of accolades that you should be, extremely proud of. So I'm grateful for. I don't even remember how we got connected with the digital roundtable, but I'm so glad that we did. And shout out to Kristen St. John, the one who did the Spotify playlist for
Yeah, I
the
love
nonprofit.
that.
Yeah. And yeah, you've just brought a lot of amazing people into my world. So before we go, will you tell everybody like how they could find you, what kind of business you're looking for, whatever you want to say about Social Driver, about the roundtable, about anything at all, really.
Oh, sure. Well, you can find me, Anthony Shop, AF Shop on Twitter, or email me, Anthony at socialdriver.com. But Social Driver, I mean, we just are really passionate about helping great companies and nonprofits connect with people, and we do that through lots of different ways: websites, social media campaigns, video, etc. So anybody, I just do calls all the time with people, just trying to help them. I probably refer half of them to other people who would be the right fit for them. So I just love that kind of discussion and that consulting piece of what I get to do. And
Yeah.
then National Digital Roundtable, we do events almost every week. Most of them are small, so we don't publicize them until after, but we're always
Right.
looking for leaders and topics and ideas. So how I met you, like we said. And I just think right now, I just have this worry that the bad guys, the foreign adversaries and the conspiracy theorists, are using digital better than a lot of the good guys. And so we need to bring the good companies and nonprofits together to learn from one another so that they can master how they use social media and their
Right.
websites. And so that, when you Google something about vaccines, you're not getting crazy stuff, but you're getting the truth. And it's not just buried in a PDF somewhere on a medical journal, right? That it's actually
Right.
out there that you can find. So that's a big part of what our mission is. And I hope that some more people can, check us out on Facebook or LinkedIn and get involved with our events.
Yeah, for sure. And let me know how I can be supportive of, anything that
Oh,
you're
we'll be
doing.
roping you back into more of our events for sure. I
I would
love the
love to.
perspective you bring.
Yeah, and I feel like I could maybe add some production stuff, like maybe making little snippets for you from the recordings or
Yeah,
something. I don't know. I
we
just
need to
think that
talk about this.
yeah, because I just feel like, what was so cool about the roundtable is just like people coming together and having this conversation, people that would have never normally been brought together before. And I learned a
Yeah.
lot and I was able to share a lot. And so I felt comfortable there and I felt good there. And I just think, listening is the revolution, right? And I think the more that we can listen to each other, the better off we'll be. And so I think just the concept of the roundtable where it's like a very respectful gathering and everybody, nobody's there to prove a point. Everybody's just kind of
Hmm.
there to check it out and to learn. And I think if we could all, be more like that in general, then we'll get to a better place sooner. So any way that I can be supportive of that movement, please let me know.
Thank you. I'll take you up on it for
Yeah,
sure.
please, for sure. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for spending this time with me, man. Huge fan. All the links for everything you do will be in the description, so people can check it out and contact you and all the good stuff. And that's it. Thank you again for being on here.
Thank you. My pleasure. And just really appreciate it, Molly.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the lower third. I hope you find that to be a great episode. Anthony is full of knowledge. We're really excited about this show. I hope that you're enjoying these episodes. If you find them to be valuable, the best thing that you could do would be to share this content on LinkedIn and tag me and Anthony in it, and we will amplify that message and spread the word. So thank you in advance. We hope you have a wonderful day and we'll catch you on the next one.